So normally when convicted killers are in court, they tend to keep their mouths closed. But this week we reported on a case involving Fat Freddie Thompson, where he spoke openly in court about some issues that you don't normally, I suppose, hear from directly. Fat Freddie Thompson is, of course, he's currently facing charges in connection with an alleged threat against a prison officer. But he was up in court for a hearing about moving his trial.
Yeah, so Fat Freddie Thompson appeared before Portlaoise Circuit Court earlier last week, and he is basically looking for his trial. So it's before the Circuit Court, it's going to be a jury trial, and basically he's charged with assaulting a prison officer at a date in 2020 in Portlaoise Prison, and he's also charged with threats to kill the prison officer in Portlaoise Prison. So that's obviously gone before a jury, and he is applied for it to move to Dublin as opposed to Portlaoise.
Yeah, so he's asked to move it basically for the issue he says he's not safe to be heard in Portlaoise. Now, obviously, at a previous hearing, we did get pictures of him coming in and out, where he was described actually by the guards as being in jovial mood. So he kind of made a couple of signs for the photographer, which we were greatly received, and pictures were happily published.
Well, he actually gave an advert to Supermax. I don't know if they'd want to convict a killer, but he basically was pictured with a Supermax drink and basically saying it's the best food in Portlaoise.
There you go.
So, and that was actually referenced in court, where he said that, he used that as an example. He said these 4 guys approached me when I was getting out of the prison van, and he was basically trying to allude to him not being safe. But these were obviously photographers. Some of them work for the Sunday World, and they were there to get a photo. So that was one of the reasons he gave, because obviously when you do go to this criminal court of justice in Dublin, people that are in custody are brought in under the basement car park, so the public have no access to that. And there's obviously, you've been there many times, there's a lot of security.
Yeah, no, look, it's different. It's certainly different when you go into the CCJ building, which a lot of people will know. It's just there on the, near the
Parkgate
train
Street,
station, Parkgate Street. But when they do go in, the guards, which we don't get pictures of people coming in anymore, they tend to be brought in by, if somebody is in prison, which Fat Freddie Thompson clearly is, and they get brought in by a guard in a van, a prison van, normally with armed guards. So they get driven in, and it's sometimes a point of controversy who gets in that way or not. Yeah. But certainly Fat Freddie Thompson is saying that this isn't the case in Portlaoise. Yeah. But I'll just read you out some of the things that Fat Freddie said during his court appearance. As I said, Freddie Thompson, when he was up on the murder charge, we didn't hear from him, as is his right. He would have kept his right to silence. His lawyers would have spoken on his behalf. But in this hearing, which is just about the location of it, he did speak directly. Yeah. And at one point, he appeared before, addressing the judge through video link. He said, "What I don't want to happen is what happened in the Regency Hotel that time when my cousin David Byrne was shot dead by armed criminals dressed as police." And he also says at another point, "If you hold the hearing in this court, I could be shot dead getting out of the prison van." Yeah. So we haven't tended to hear from him. Obviously, he's referencing there the murder of his first cousin David Byrne in the Regency Hotel.
Yes, he is. Yes, so we haven't heard from him much, but he has taken to representing himself. So when he was first charged with these offences in the district court, he was actually representing himself. Last week, a barrister was in court speaking on his behalf. It's obviously a circuit court now; it's more serious. But he spoke to the judge via video link, so he has been definitely more involved in this case. But yeah, he basically gave various different reasons as to why his trial should be moved. He also spoke about how he believed that Daithí Douglas, for whom he's serving the life sentence for murdering, was a member of the Hutch Crime Family, and that he believed he was under threat from the Hutch Crime Family. So
yeah, I mean, he says about his cousin, he was shot 4 times. He was shot twice in the head, and the state can't make that mistake again. This is my life we're talking about. He does say, so Daithí Douglas was shot dead in 2000 and
November 2016,
and he was coming out of a shop that he was running in the South Inner City, and he was approached and shot dead. And Freddie Thompson is serving a life sentence for that. But he says He also did a grounding affidavit as part of this hearing. So what you have to do in these cases is you basically set out what your beliefs are and why you're looking at that, and it has to be signed by, in this case, by him personally. And he says, in this affidavit, I say and believe that Mr. Douglas was a member of the Hutch Crime Family, and I say and believe that because of my conviction, that my life is in danger and that there is a direct threat on my life from the Hutch Crime Family. So that's the basics of the hearing. He also then speaks about, in the affidavit, he says, my concern is that if somebody should wish me harm, they should have no difficulty attacking me as I leave the van and walk into court. What did the state obviously resisted that? What was their, I suppose, their view of his safety, the safety measures around Mr. Thompson?
They said that basically there's always, when it comes to Fat Freddie, there's always a serious security detail in place. He said there's armed detectives, there's uniformed members of the guards stationed around the courthouse. He said that he's appeared in that courthouse on 3 previous occasions and that there's never been an issue. Obviously, the reference to the 4 men who were, we know, photographers approaching him previously when he had the Supermax was brought up by Fat Freddie, and the guard responded to this and said, he was in a jovial mood with the photographers. There was never any risk there. And, they said that, in relation to the security arrangements around him, they said, that he didn't want to give specific members details of this because he said Fat Freddie is a member of the Kinahan gang, he's a criminal background, and he said he's a flight risk as well. But he basically said, the security assessment is always done, and, when it comes to Fat Freddie, this courthouse will be secured.
Yeah, and obviously then Freddie comes back and he makes a case really that he is under threat. And his sort of broad case is that he's been kept in Portlaoise instead of Wheatfield. Wheatfield prison obviously be closer to his home in Maryland's in the south inner city, when typically the prison service try and house people close to their home so they can get family visits and stuff like that. But he says he's been kept in Portlaoise specifically because of the threat against his life, who he says comes from the Hutch Crime Family. And he's also says at that point that if the court wants to check that, they can ring the Phoenix Park, basically Garda headquarters, because he's obviously saying that he's been told specifically that there is a threat against his life.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He said that he was told that within the 8 years that he served in prison that there's a threat to his life. And he said that basically he was inferring from what the evidence given by the Gardaí was that they're saying there's not a threat. Now, that obviously wasn't directly said in court, but that's how he was taking it. And he said, as you said, ring the headquarters of the guards in Phoenix Park and they'll tell you. But, when asked by his barrister, when the senior guard was asked by his barrister, would he accept that the CCJ is has the best security facilities? He said, of course they do, but Portlaoise Courthouse is more than capable of securing Mr. Thompson. And he also said, the counsel for the state then also said that they evaluate the risk, and they have experts who look at these things, and that there won't be any doubt that this will be done, basically. Yeah,
now look, and also it may be the case that photographers, for example, would know local Gardaí, and Gardaí would know local photographers and may be comfortable in, checking people if there's cars sitting around. They may, as typical security assessment would be that they would check regs or whatever, the guards have access to that, so they might know somebody is a photographer.
Yeah.
I suppose he also, obviously, the fact that he's come in and out, the guards have certainly said that shows that it can be done safely.
Yeah.
Freddie Thompson came back saying, well, that was a one-off hearing. If it's a hearing over a number of days, people could put in other plans.
Yeah.
So what did we hear about in terms of the decision? It's due tomorrow, is it?
Yeah, so Justice Keenan Johnson, who's hearing the application, reserved judgment, which means he's going to think about it basically, and he's going to give that decision at 2:00 on Thursday. So we'll know by then tomorrow. But I just wanted to add as well that this isn't the first application that Fat Freddie has put in to move the trial to Dublin. He put in a previous application basically saying that he believes that he couldn't get a fair trial because he's in prison in Portlaoise, where juror members would would be taken from the county elite, and that basically they were trying to suggest that maybe jury members would know prison officers in that prison, and for that reason he wouldn't get a fair trial. And it was obviously very clearly put by the state and by representatives of the guards that, you know, this happened many occasions where people who were living in Portlaoise are tried in Portlaoise, and that's never an issue. And obviously jury members are very strongly told, if you know anybody that's on trial who you are judging, that you have to make that known. So that was thrown out, that application was thrown out by the judge.
Yeah, and the state always, the explanation was thrown out by the judge, was it? Oh, sorry, the
previous application was thrown out.
So I mean, and of course the state have brought this up, and the judge refused that application previously, and you know, the decision not to move the trial was said to be final and unappealable. And after Judge Johnson ruled against him on this point, Mr. Fennelly called Garda Patrick Ryan of Portlaoise Garda Station to give evidence regarding security. So we will get a judgment tomorrow, and we may even hear more from Fat Freddie Thompson again directly. You know,
sounds like he's definitely hasn't become shy in prison anyway. So
no, he has something to say.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Eimear.
Thank you, Niall.
Robbie Lawler was out of control.
This is Double Cross, the murder of Robbie Lawler.
It was going to be an all-out war with him in the middle of it.
A Crime World special investigation podcast based on my new book, Web of Betrayal, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Nicola Tallant, and you're watching Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs and the underworld in Ireland and across the globe. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be the first to watch all our latest episodes. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts.